Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another week in my life / day in my life. So we have a lot going on around here, as you guys know, and today I'm bringing you along for tons of house renovations and just all of the work that we've been doing, because as you guys know, we've been doing a lot of work and it's been really snowy around here. And the funny thing is, this is exactly how I hoped my winter would be, spent inside building our home and preparing for spring. And so today, that is what we're doing. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump right in. Oh, and I decided to sit down and give you guys a little bit of a chatty life update and fill you in on what's been going on. If you liked today's video, please give it a thumbs up. With all of that being said, let's hop right in. All right, so as you guys know, my new full-time job is painting trim. Just kidding, although I still did have a good amount of trim to paint on this day. This bathroom actually still has a decent amount of work ahead of it in terms of even painting stuff and things we want to do with the cupboards. But like I said, I was focused on trim, so I painted around the door and then I stopped and stepped outside to work on the trim for the floor. Now, you guys saw that in the house, I painted the trim when it was on the floor, connected. But for this trim, for a couple different reasons, we decided to paint it separate from the floor. So Dan had set it up in the garage on these little wood crates, and I spent a good amount of time just trying to paint my trim. I honestly don't know which one was easier. I mean, it was really cold on this day, and I was just trying to not get paint everywhere and drop these. So in the moment, these felt really hard. It felt really hard, but I spent a long time painting trim on the floor, a full week. So in some ways, this was a little easier. So this, I realize, isn't really a great report back to you, but there we go. So it was also very exciting because on this day, we actually received our appliances. Now, I'm showing you, I was having this random snack of apples and cheddar, which has become my favorite snack. But back to the appliances, we received our dishwasher on this day, which ironically is, or at least we thought, the exact same dishwasher as the one we had in Nashville, and we loved it. We've loved all of our LG appliances, actually, so that's why we bought another one. And then we also bought an LG washer and dryer. Like I just said, LG's been really good to us. The appliances have been great, so that's what we went with. So we were leading into lunch, but before we went to get food, I needed to clean the top of this shelf thing in our bathroom. I did not end up painting it because no one's gonna see it, but it definitely needed to be cleaned. It was pretty disgusting and dirty. There's a lot of height to this house. Even though it's a smaller one-story home, it's got a lot of height. And so painting and cleaning and all of that has been quite the challenge, but I think is going to be really beautiful and cool to use in our decorating when all is said and done, because I think I'm going to have a lot of high-placed plants, and I'm very excited about that. So for lunch on this day, we went to a local burger place called the Surf Shack, and I really like their burgers. I really like the Surf Shack and Rogers, but this is what we went with on this day. We got some double D's with grilled onions. It was delicious. Oh, I also forgot when our appliances were delivered that we got a new microwave. So Dan worked on putting that up, and then I made my way just kind of through the house, taking a look at different things that I could work on next. And also just wanting to kind of show you the state of how things were doing at this point. Oh, I didn't tell you guys this, but Dan actually decided to add a shower door to our bathtub, which fast forward was the best decision ever and was not my idea. So go you, Dan. As you can see, it looks really cool, but way more importantly than that, it's actually made the showering and bathing experience much more comfortable in here. It keeps the heat in. It's not so worrisome when Logan's showering that he's gonna be splashing water everywhere. So while Dan was working on that, because that was a 2-day process of things needing to dry, glue and caulking for the shower. So while he was working on that, I made my way to our guest bathroom and decided to just start scrubbing and cleaning. Now, I am pretty confident that this day was actually our first day that we were going to be sleeping in there, or our first night. And so we really felt like we just needed to get like some basic things pretty clean. And my sister actually came over to help us make that happen. You guys know I used to go on and on and on about how in awe I am of like watching seasons when I lived in Nashville, because just that was very different than what I was used to in LA. And here it's obviously even more so that way. And so you probably are going to see way more National Geographic shots on my channel than maybe you ever signed up for. I'm just in awe. God's creation is so beautiful and seasons are crazy. Something cool I thought I'd share. My Vessies, which I got back in Nashville, they're supposed to be like weatherproof. They literally are. I can step fully submerged in snow and my feet stay completely warm and completely dry. So just throwing it out there. All right, so we didn't have a pantry in this house. And a lot of you asked when we tore down that wall and essentially the pantry in the middle of the house to open up the like floor plan, a lot of you asked me, okay, well, where's your pantry going to be? And we didn't really have an answer. A lot of this whole house project in general, like we've had visions for things, but a lot of it's kind of been one step at a time because neither of us have ever done this. Like Dan, yes, has a serious background in serious construction, but he's never, like redone a house for us before. So we actually ended up deciding on taking the little front like coat closet and turning it into a pantry because it's right here next to the kitchen and it gave us a lot of shelves. So I had painted the inside and the trim, and Dan went and got shelving for the inside and he had to like cut it down to fit in the shape because this closet is actually a very funky shape. You can't really see it from here. But yeah, it ended up working out great. So coat closet is now a pantry. Now on this day, I decided to have a little treat because I deserve it. So I made some break and bake sweet Lorenz chocolate chip cookies. They're gluten-free cookies with really simple ingredients, and I added a little bit of Malden sea salt on top. It was delicious. And then I did a super disgusting job, almost as disgusting as the top of the cupboards were. If you saw that video when I was standing on the counter, like scrubbing the top, this is kind of the stuff that was on top of the cupboards, just like years of, life caked onto something, cooking oil and dust and all of that. And honestly, guys, I probably spent, I'm not even kidding, maybe 35 minutes, I don't know, standing at the sink, scrubbing, spraying, using soap, super hot water, our scrub brush, which I don't remember what that specific scrub brush is called. It's not steel wool, but something like that. And it worked so well. And I got this thing like, I don't even know, 90% of the gunk off. It's still pretty gunky. And if you hadn't seen it before, you might not realize how good it is. But it was really satisfying to get all of that cleaned. Random, but I pulled out the salami to snack on with Logie, and then Dan pulled out the ingredients he would need to make his specialty pasta. You guys know Dan loves to cook. Like I love to cook, but Dan also loves to cook. And he's got this recipe for pasta he's been making recently. Oh, by the way, I was putting away some groceries I picked up as well on this day. We'll go back to that, but I had also gotten Dan stuff to make a specialty pasta that he learned from this other guy on YouTube. Anyways, I took a seat and I organized a bunch of my hair stuff. Most of the stuff I have put away right now is going to have to be reorganized again in like a couple of months once we're settled in, because everything was put away in a really temporary fashion. And that's true of this day as well. But I also wanted to throw away some things and just like at least get some basic organization going. So that's what I did. And then Dan made his saucy posse. And as you can see coming out of the Instant Pot, it looks delicious because it was delicious. It's just kind of like a basic bolognese. I think he used sausage though, and even though it's basic, it's so delicious. It does not taste basic. And yeah, thank you, Dan, for feeding me. Now, speaking of feeding me or just feeding people, on this day, we actually had a really random lunch. I have never been a huge consumer or buyer of Costco's pre-made in-house items, but I had this taco kit at a small group night and it was really yummy. And we got to talking about how great it is to have some of these random Costco meals just like on deck when you're really stretched for time. And so even though you guys already know, my life goal continues to be cooking more and more from scratch. At this point, we're basically still camping in our house. So it's just kind of a matter of like getting ourselves fed. So I heated up the meat for the tacos and I threw some of the tortillas in the oven. When we get this kit, this actually feeds us for 2 meals approximately. The second meal I have to kind of fatten out a little bit with like maybe some beans and guac. But in general, it's 2 meals, which is really great for the 3 of us. And it's tasty and easy and yeah, it was good. So once I had all my components heated up, ready to go, I just plated the tacos. Super simple, super yummy. And in case you're wondering, I give Logan 1 to 2 tacos depending on how Dan and I are feeling on that day and how hungry Logie seems. And I also make Logan's into more of like a burrito and I wrap it in aluminum foil like halfway down so that it's easy for him to hold and it doesn't just like fall apart. And he loves it and he will excitedly say like, taco, I like taco. So super cute. All right, so in this scene, it's weird to call it a scene, but we'll call it that. Dan was putting on safety locks, like child safety locks. Now, the irony is, since then, we've actually taken off every single cabinet in our kitchen because fast forward to the present, I've actually started already painting these cabinets, but we knew we needed to have child locks at some point. So on this night, Dan started installing the child locks that we already had on hand. Side note that is not a side note, I love that Logan loves watching Dan work on projects around the house. It makes my heart really happy. So as you can see, we brought our bed over from my parents, and I believe this was after like night 1 of sleeping there. And I made the bed because even though it's on the floor, still got to make the bed. And I did a bunch of laundry. Now that we have our own washer and dryer, it was actually really exciting to get to do the laundry. If you guys have been watching my videos for a while, you know that I don't actually hate doing laundry. I actually kind of like doing laundry, and I'm grateful. So we're obviously currently setting up Logan's space, and it was so sweet to walk into his room and see him just happily reading and playing with his flashcards, which, by the way, I'm obsessed with these flashcards. This is the same author, Tabitha Page, or at Fox Hollow Studios on Instagram. She actually created that trio set of books that I've shared on here a few times that Logan loves. So just throwing that out there. If you haven't checked out Tabitha's books, she's incredibly talented and her stuff is just lovely. Logan loves reading his books, and that makes my heart so happy. I think he was excited to see them all lined up in his room and just his room kind of slowly be put together. So he spent a good amount of time on this afternoon just like playing with his stuff and reading books. So our guest bedroom slash going to be our temporary office for a few months room was completely a disaster because it kind of turned into our catch-all room for a while. So I just had to show you guys to just remind you again that I'm a normal human whose life is sometimes a mess. So I had to show you the weather on this night because these clouds were just so dramatic and it was so beautiful. And we went on this night to get burgers and fries again. I love Rogers too. And Logan, honestly, burgers and fries like might be his favorite food. He loves burgers and fries, and we love getting burgers and fries. And we also like making burgers and fries. But with the move, this has come in clutch multiple times. It is as delicious as it looks. So I didn't film any of the pickup process, but as you can see, we did get quite a few things cleared from this room on this night. So that was pretty exciting. Hi guys. So Welcome to our house. You've been here before. You've been here a few times during the construction process. I guess it just feels very official because I'm sitting down and talking and filming. And I still don't have like my cameras out, which that's a whole separate side note because I almost broke all of my cameras. And I almost died. So I'll be telling that story in a minute. I'm still filming on my iPhone, but we are slowly but surely unpacking everything. And so we've done 2 nights here. Our heater is actually broken now, which is fun times and very weird because the heater's been working like a champ, like through all the construction and all of that. And it's also funny because it's like freezing out right now. Like we got down to 7 degrees yesterday, which is very cold for the SoCal native. And we have a lot of snow outside, and Logan and I actually went and played out in the snow yesterday, and it was really fun. And so I joke about, you know, like, oh, this SoCal native, even though there totally is snow, depending on where you go in Southern California, I never saw snow till I was 14. So this to me is all still very novel. Let me turn my phone around and show you what I'm looking at. So, lots of snow. So today I wanted to sit down and give you guys a little bit of a life update. This might be something nobody asked for. Like nobody asked for this. You might not be wanting this, or you might be wanting it. I really enjoy hearing life updates from people that I follow, and especially because my video making and my updates and stuff in general have been pretty sporadic the last few months for like such a long list of reasons. But I just felt like there were things I just wanted to update you guys on, chat to you about what we've been up to, what life has been like. And it's really crazy because now we're definitely going to be going into a different chapter, like settling into the house. And it feels very surreal. Dan and I were saying that last night. It's almost like we forgot that we used to have a different life. Does that make sense? It's kind of crazy, the series of events and the way that everything went down, because, you know, we had the trauma and the craziness of the events that unfolded with Bowser earlier in the year. And going from that, and it was pretty immediate, and you guys know this especially if you're over on my Patreon, which I'm about to film a Patreon video after this. I've been off of there for like the last month, just because of all the craziness I'm about to fill you guys in on. But yeah, you know, we went from that and we ended up leaving town and moving so much faster than expected because of how everything unfolded and just the way that people started coming at us, like in real life and for our livelihood and threats, and you guys already know all that. And experiencing that was a really big trip in general, but it was especially a trip doing it away from my parents and then just being like, okay, we're moving, and then up and leaving, and so many changes so fast, done in such a, you know, there was a lot of stress, a lot of tears, and obviously trauma in the mix. And so it feels really crazy to be like in the house now. And like I said, Dan and I last night, it was like this flashback of like, oh yeah, we used to have a different life prior to 6 months ago. And I know that's so obvious sounding, but like I just gave that big whole speech, all of the things that unfolded that brought us here to the basement of my parents' house with like none of our stuff, and all of the hobbies that were just put on pause pretty much completely, the sadness, the mourning, just like a lot, right? And so realizing that as we're coming in, like, oh yeah, we used to be adults, and like we're gonna be doing our own thing again, our own cooking and like our own schedule, and like baby's not gonna always have to sleep in the same room as us, you know? He can take naps in his own room and whatever. So it's just like very surreal. And living in the basement for 6 months was hard, you know? It was such a blessing. And really, let's be real, it wasn't that hard. Like in the scheme of hard things, it really wasn't that hard. But in the scheme of, like I said, the last 6 months, in the layout of everything that went down, it was hard. You know, I think it's exactly what we needed. I think we needed, after everything that happened, to be away from our stuff. I think obviously, I mean, that's what God had for us. So in my mind, I'm like, I guess that's what we needed. We needed to have some stuff purged. You know, I haven't said this really, but we actually did not leave Nashville with all of our stuff. There's a lot of things that actually got left behind, just because of some issues with like our coordination and our moving and how fast it all happened, and communication, just like a lot of stuff. We had a lot of stuff not a lot, but quite a few things be left behind in Nashville. And it was really disappointing and sad. but it also just is what it is, and we're happy to be safe and alive and in a house. And yeah, we have a lot of work that we're planning on doing here. One of them, the obvious, you can see behind me, I'm actually planning on painting those cabinets at some point, probably within the next couple weeks. I really wanted to do it like soon, but I guess fast forwarding to the story I mentioned in the beginning, I was gonna say earlier, well, maybe I won't even tell the story yet, but I'll make a mention. I'm physically wrecked right now. Like, I'm okay, but I'm like not okay. And the thought of painting that right now sounds horrible. So it's gonna be a few weeks because of the accident that I got into that I'll talk about in a minute. But I wanna back up to just cover some other things. I'm looking over here because I have my iPad there, and I took like some notes on things I wanted to kind of touch on. That was actually one of them, was the cabinets. Side note, that's not a side note because we're all still on the same topic here. That light, all these lights, we're actually going to be switching out lights, and I'm so excited because we're working with this lighting company that has some of the most beautiful lights. I just feel so grateful that we're going to be able to switch out these lights. You guys are gonna be like, because some of these lights are they're all beautiful, but some of them are like particularly, whatchamacallit, like statement pieces, and I'm very excited. Also, moving my upper back, I'm like, I'm feeling the effects of this accident. I'm like day 3 of the accident right now, and you know, like how, as it unfolds, you start to really see like, okay, what did I actually do here? That's what I'm dealing with. You know what? That's a good time to actually segue into this story. So, if you follow me on Instagram, you already know this story. I already told it over there. Although I didn't tell it, I wrote it because I was so like in shock, and it just felt like the easiest, most straightforward way to explain like what happened. But basically, Dan and I, this last week, we spent a whole week basically being alone in this house. Like, not really, but kind of. My sister Michelle was watching Logan for like many hours throughout the day so that we could come to the house and be alone and get work done. And so he was not over here, which I'm saying that because when I tell you this story, a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, thank God Logan this didn't happen to him. And I'm like, yes, thank God it didn't, but everyone should know he wasn't even here. Like, so it's a different mindset when you know your baby's not around in terms of like how you're handling things. Anyways, I was putting things away in the closet, and I was a little delirious, a little hangry, a little tired, a little out of it from a week of, well, really weeks of doing stuff and 6 months of whatever, but we had been moving a lot. So I'm putting boxes away, and I'm like, okay, before Logan gets in here, I need to put all of the fragile things, or like the very important don't touch things, up on the shelf in our office. So I was like, okay, cameras need to go up. So I picked up the box, I put the cameras in the thing, which as I'm saying this, I'm just like, thank God it wasn't that box or the next box. And I don't even know how it wasn't, because it was all in the same area. I put up the camera box, then I picked up a box with all of our lenses, and I put that away. And then I picked a box up with all of our glass spray bottles, and I stepped forward and reached up to put the box up. And I keep telling everyone that this was like the feeling of when you go to drink water and then it's Sprite and you're like, whoa, I was not expecting that. It was like that on steroids. I stepped forward to put the back up, and I stepped through the ground. Basically, our closet has a big like trap door in it that leads to the basement that you lift up from the ground. Well, it had been lifted up, and Dan and I had been like moving things around, so it was open from stuff going down, and I didn't realize that. And I literally stepped straight through the door and fell down. And let me put this in perspective. It's about a 7-foot drop, and praise God, literally praise God so much, because I totally could have died, but also we had the ladder there. So thank God the ladder was there, but also thank God that I landed on the ladder in such like a okay way. Now I have some, like my butt is like black and blue bruised, and like I'm hurting places, and I have like a little scab on my back, but like nothing, at least as far as I can tell right now, that insane happened. I threw my neck out, which you guys know over the last couple of years, I've struggled with throwing my neck out, but I'm like, if all I leave from this with is a sore body, I'm in shock, because it was one of the scariest moments in my life to not even like, dude, just stepping and falling down would be terrifying, but I was looking up and I just fell through, and somehow I was like strewn on the ladder. And my brain kept thinking about all the ways that it could have gone like really, really wrong. Like, wow, how did I not like fold in half and then the ladder like flew over? Or like, how did I not land on the ground? Because the box I was holding came through the hole with me and shattered. I could have just broken a leg falling through the ladder wrong. And somehow I don't even really know. I was very out of it. And Dan hears the crash and he's like, whoa, Nikki, are you okay? And I was like silent. I'm like shaking. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I just start yelling. I'm like, no, I'm not okay. And Dan's like, what? And he comes running into the other room and he didn't know at first. He thought that I had been putting things down there and he was like, go Nikki, like unpacking into the basement, like you're doing it. He didn't know for like the first 30 seconds that I had stepped and completely fallen through. And he's just like, oh baby, I'm so sorry. Like, here, you want me to help you come out? And I'm like, I don't even have footing. Like I all of a sudden realized I was dangling, but my feet weren't on any of the steps. So I was like through the ladder, like just hanging there. And he's like, oh my gosh. And then he starts piecing it together. I'm like, I stepped through and it hit me and I just start sobbing. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm hurting. I almost died. It was like the shock hit me. So, yeah, that was crazy. And it was very scary. And it was the same feeling, honestly, even more because I kind of did get in like a car accident. But like, you know, when you're driving and you almost get in a car accident, maybe not everyone's like this, but I'm like this. And you think about it like all week, at least all day, but potentially all week because you're just like that, like one of those car accidents where you're like, I literally could have died. And you just keep thinking, wow, my whole life could have been different. Like I could have been paralyzed or killed this last week. And so that's like what kept going through my mind with this was just like all of the ways that things could have gone wrong. And I actually didn't throw out my neck at first. It was that night I was dreaming. I had a dream that I stepped through the hole and the ladder wasn't there. And when I landed, I like gasped and woke up and I threw my neck out. So I don't know if I'd already thrown my neck out in my sleep or if that was just the moment where my body was like, you're done. And I opened my eyes and just like, but I knocked it out. So today it's getting better each day. The first 2 days were rough. So Thursday, Friday. Today, I would say I have like a lot more range of motion, but my upper back is like, you've seen me hitting it and moving. It's pretty wrecked and I'm still really bruised and my elbow hurts and my shoulder hurts. So, I mean, that was kind of a long story, but there's more of the story if you wanted to hear more than just in writing. And so I'm so grateful. I've been a lot slower, obviously, since then. Like Thursday and Friday, I helped the most I could because I couldn't help it. Like in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. I want to keep going. And I was taking some painkillers, which is something that I don't really love to do, even though I have dealt with a lot of chronic pain over the years. I think you guys know this, I've told you this. I don't really like to take a lot of like Advil. The one I was taking the last few days is like a mix of Advil and I think aspirin. It's like a mix of the two. But yeah, I didn't get very much done. And I still feel like very slow, achy, not that helpful. But yeah, and then last night, now we're changing gears. We're kind of changing gears. Last night, sorry, I'm gonna sit back like this because that feels comfortable for a minute. I went to go take a bath. I went to go take a bath the last 2 nights and the water wasn't that hot and I was kind of disappointed. I'm like, man, like I left the dream tub in Nashville. And so the tub is one of the things that did not get moved and packed here. It's a whole thing. We wanted it moved and packed here, but it didn't pan out that way because of a lot of different factors. So I'm pretty depressed about that. No, let me back up. I'm not pretty depressed about that. I'm over it. I was pretty depressed about that. And then taking a cold shower or warmish bath the last couple nights was like not the most fun. But then last night, another like, praise God moment. It's not like I'm being sarcastic, but I'm not. Dan figured out that our water heater was set to like vacation mode. So it wasn't even like turned on. So once he switched it, and after I put Logan to bed, I took another shower and I was like, oh, there's my water. So good news, guys. Here we're not sure whether we're gonna call it Philippi Farms or Casa de Maria, which is a whole other thing. Casa de Maria / Philippi Farms, we have hot water and I'm very excited about that, especially considering we're living in like an actual winter, you know, like I've always, well not always, but in recent years, especially just with like my aches and pains and all of that, really like baths, but especially in a place where it's cold, it like adds another dimension of like wanting to take a bath. So I'm very excited that Dan figured out that the water heater was on vacation mode. Now he's out trying to figure out what pieces we need to hopefully fix our heater because crazy. It's pretty warm in here because thank God our fireplace works and we have a space heater that my parents are letting us borrow that works really well. So the house isn't really that cold. That's why I'm just like kicking it in a 3/4 sweatshirt. But you know, it was really cold this morning when we woke up. So I'm really glad that he's doing that. I'm just turning back on my iPad to look at my notes. The crazy thing, side note about this fall is like, this is, gosh, you guys are getting all my physical updates. About 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, I broke my toe. I think I told you guys this. So dumb. I was putting on my pants while trying to walk up the stairs, apparently. At least that's what Dan tells me. Don't remember trying to walk up the stairs. Apparently I did. And when I pushed my leg through, my elbow, and stepped forward, I rammed my toe into the stairs so hard, I broke it. And that's been quite the healing process. Like the internet said it would take about 2 months. It's taken about 2 months. It's a little longer than 2 months. And I feel like I'm just getting back to normal. But what's crazy about that is what that came along with was I've never had plantar fasciitis. Now I've been struggling with plantar fasciitis on my right foot, which is the foot that I broke, the toe. According to Google, that's like super common for people to break their outer toe and then get plantar fasciitis. So hopefully that goes away soon. But from that toe injury, I actually kind of acquired like a new, maybe this will be encouraging to you guys, like a newish injury. I started having a clicking, like a click on my right knee, which it clicks when I do this, like it always, cracks. But, and my left knee is always grinding, but it was like a new thing, like going up the stairs, it clicked every time. And I was like, no, like when you deal with chronic injuries and pain and they've kind of acquired over time, anytime you do something new, you're like, is this around to stay? Like, oh, I hope not. But it was crazy because all of a sudden after that was there for like a month, I'm walking up the stairs one morning after I wake up and I'm like, oh, it's gone. And like, just like that, the click left. So that's another random like praise God. My toe is healing. I still got this plantar fasciitis, but the click in my leg that clearly came from the toe, gone. I'm so grateful. So now I just got to stop like hurting myself with stupid injuries, which I have never hurt myself so many times as I have since living here in the I feel it bad. I keep using the word dumb and stupid, and I don't feel like those are appropriate words for kids in case your kids are watching, but maybe it's fine. Really like silly ways there's a good word for it. I keep hurting myself in silly ways. I have never burnt myself on a stove as much as I have since living here. Now, granted, I've been cooking on electric stoves and I've never used electric, and I do think that's part of it because of the surface to surface contact, but still it's everything. I just keep like hurting myself doing silly things. And in the past, I've hurt myself silly ways, but it's more like things like, oh, I sneezed wrong, or like I bent over and looked up and something happened. Not like I was putting my pants walking up the stairs and I kicked and broke my toe, or I stepped through a hole in the floor, like just, I feel like I'm done complaining, so I can move on to some other topics. No, seriously, complaining is a weird thing on the internet, on a side note, because I've mentioned this before. As a content creator, there's like part of you want to encourage and inspire people with like the positive, helpful, joyful things going on in your life that hopefully you can share. And like I said, encourage and inspire people. But then there's also this part of you that it's like the internet can make people look perfect. So you want to share things that aren't going well. But then also like, I don't know, you share things sometimes and people are like, that's way too personal. And it's just like, I don't know. I think you get what I'm saying. It's just a little sticky. And I know a lot of you guys, not a lot of you, but a chunk of you that have messaged me over the years have also struggled with chronic pain and like just injuries and stuff. And you've liked hearing the updates, so there we go. So now let's move on to something else. Quick little update about Logan. I just want to say this. He is talking so much. I am literally blown away at like how much my baby talks. He's got a really wide vocabulary and he's just chatty. Like honestly, my mom thinks it's hysterical because she said that I just like talked nonstop as a kid. And for her, that kind of drove her crazy. For me, it doesn't really drive me crazy. I actually really am like tickled pink that my son talks this much because his little voice is so cute and it's fun to hear his little thoughts. But it will be a little crazy making it moments if it's like, you're trying to focus on something and he asks for something and it's like repeated over and over. Like he's a big repeater, so he'll repeat the words over and over and over. So sometimes repetitive words in the wrong moment are hard, but in general, I'm just like, I'm so pleased that he's saying so much, and it's almost like every day or every few days, like the way that he talks will kind of alter, and he'll have new words or new ways of saying things, and trying to put sentences together, and like it's so cute. Like for a while, and I think he started to get it now, when he would like, I'm trying to think, drop things. He'd drop it and go, oops, I fall. It's like, oh, you didn't fall, but you dropped something. So he's learning like the difference between fall and dropping something. And that was a really lame example, but like just all over, lots of differences of words that he's kind of going through. And he loves his books. That makes my heart so happy too, because I love reading to him, and I love that he loves to read. I'm really excited to get his room set up. He doesn't know this yet, but he actually got a beanbag from grandma for Christmas. So that's gonna be really cute for him to be able to read and hang out in and drag it around the house. It's this light gray, it's so cute. We picked it out from Pottery Barn Kids. It's a light gray beanbag with white stars on it, but the stars glow in the dark. How cute is that? Okay, I'm so excited to be here. I'm excited to finish setting things up. I mean, here's the thing. I'm not a real, like, I don't love doing all of the home projects, like by any means, to be honest. I'm willing to do them, and I want to do them to have the kind of home that I want to have, but I'm not someone who's like going to be looking for endless projects or like loves doing this for like a lot of different reasons. I really just want my home, and I want to just be able to cook and garden, play piano, sing, record music, record videos, just keep doing all of that. So it's gonna be an interesting few months. And it's crazy to me that this panned out exactly how I'd hoped it to pan out. Well, and even better, because now we live next door to my parents. But in the sense of like, I hoped to be in our house by winter, because I pictured in my head, I wanna be inside by the time it's snowing. I don't wanna be house hunting. I wanna just be unpacking, cleaning, getting cozy. And here we are, like snowstorm happening. We're in the house doing just that, and I kind of can't believe it. And I'm just, like I said, so excited to get plants going again. And you know, my sourdough starter, oh, I can't wait to get my sourdough starter going again. And it's just gonna be really cool. And I will say on that note, I talked recently on Patreon about diet and food, and you know, how I've been eating lately. And I will say one thing I wanted to add to that, even though this isn't Patreon, I pretty much just talked about like Nourishing Traditions. It's a diet book, and just kind of where my head's been at in terms of food. But one thing I've been kind of paying attention to the last few months that I'm excited to start implementing more is this whole side of the internet called the pro-metabolic community. That's kind of how that's how I class it, the pro-metabolic community. And they have like a very, well, honestly, the farther I'm getting into it, the more I'm like, oh, it's like a really specific way of eating. But the general gist and like the basics of what I've learned about like eating pro-metabolically has been really fascinating to me, very interesting, very like worth my consideration. And also, well, that sounds weird, but I mean like worth considering my health history. Like as I look at all of it, I'm like, oh man, this is interesting. I feel like anytime you go on any kind of diet or health change, obviously it has to make sense to you a little bit in your head, and then you try it. And lots of diets make sense in our head, right? I mean, that's why so many people have like different ideas of diets. And obviously, what's the phrase? Context. Context is everything. Everybody, you know, has a different, they're dealing with a different situation in their body. But in general, a lot of the basic principles that the pro-metabolic community talks about are things that I'm like, okay, that would make a lot of sense for me and my specific health history. And so I'm willing to try this. And so I'll be talking about it maybe a little more. Like I've honestly been watching videos or listening to videos kind of like a crazy person since I stumbled onto this whole like community. And the person who kind of turned me onto this is my friend Maria. If you're watching this, you know Maria. And I'd seen it, like once we started talking about it, I realized I actually followed a couple of these accounts, but because Instagram's algorithm is so bad, they had never been served to me. So I had never seen their stuff really after I followed, and I never had gone down the wormhole. But since talking to Maria, I just started diving down the wormhole, and like I've listened through, okay, there's a girl in the community her name is Jessica Ash Wellness. And she has a YouTube channel where she uploads all of her Instagram lives, and I've been like listening to them, like binging her whole library. And it's all fascinating. So that's kind of a side note, but I've already started implementing some of the things like eating every 2 to 4 hours, which is something really 2 to 3 hours. I kind of used to do growing up. Fun fact about me, one of my earliest health symptoms of like something being off was migraines. I started getting migraines when I was like 7-ish. Like so bad I would have to go to the hospital to get like injections because painkillers wouldn't stop the migraines, and I would have to keep like my head and eyes buried under a pillow, and like everybody would have to be quiet because it was just throbbing. And I remember that the reason I was able to stop the headaches, like how we got rid of them, was a homeopathic doctor who was like, you just need to eat every 2 to 3 hours, and I'm pretty sure your headaches are gonna go away. Ow. She was totally right. Now granted, as I've gotten older, like a lot of stuff, time has progressed, obviously, a lot of stuff has changed, and sadly enough, I can actually say now, I used to think like, cool, but now I'm like, oh, that's probably not a good thing. I've gotten to the point where I can go long periods of time without food. Like I could, because you guys know I've dabbled with intermittent fasting. I've actually kind of been intermittent fasting for the last few years. And the biggest thing that brought me towards intermittent fasting was the claim and the concept that when you are not eating food for, I don't remember what the hour mark is. I think it's like after 6 hours. Honestly, whoa, no, I think it's after 12 hours. After 12 hours, they've made comments about, or I've heard comments within like the fasting community, the intermittent fasting community, that the ability for your body to fight inflammation and whatever those markers are that are like fighting inflammation, it's like good after 12 hours. That was worded in the weirdest way ever. But point being, the benefits start kicking in supposedly after 12 hours. But this pro-metabolic approach and viewpoint gave me a totally different lens to look at that. And just because I'm still dealing with things, like it's not like I became an intermittent faster and suddenly all my problems went away, or like, wow, I've gotten like stronger and better and this and that. I've actually looked back and I'm like, okay, I have had more healing in the last couple of years physically, but it definitely hasn't been from intermittent fasting, because really I was intermittent fasting prior to these other changes I made. But the biggest changes I made in the last couple of years have honestly just been animal products, consuming animal products more, like eggs and cheese and meat and all of that, honey. And I talked about that on Patreon, but the point is the pro-metabolic community just like is adding thoughts to that in my head. Like I said, for example, eating every 2 to 3 hours is a fascinating concept to me, just considering the whole pitch. Like I said, when you listen to hours and hours and hours and hours of someone pitching this like health concept, it's almost hard to explain, but whatever. I'm sure you guys have heard the general pitch of eating every 2 to 3 hours. But when they really break it down and then you look at your own health history and context, which I did, obviously, it's like, oh, this is really interesting. And so I'm excited to continue to implement different things that I'm learning from that side of life. I'm always someone that tends to just like eat the fish and spit out the bones, meaning I keep the things that work for me and I don't for the things that don't. But yeah, that's kind of gonna be exciting, especially now being in our own kitchen again. And it's honestly, I know time is gonna fly between getting the house together and trying to get pregnant. I'm not pregnant yet. But if everyone could, throw up a prayer for me, that'd be great. I sound like I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. I always sound sarcastic. Well, I don't always. I sometimes sound sarcastic. I would really appreciate your guys' prayers. Because I know God's timing is the best timing. In my head now, though, we're in the house and I would really like to get pregnant like as soon as possible. Side note, it's really crazy to think that assuming God does give us a baby and assuming things, it's always like under assumption, right? You never know how things are gonna go, but assuming things go well according to plan, I'll be having a baby in this house. That's crazy to me. And also, wow, we'll end on this. Home birthing. I've mentioned this before. There's a podcast called the Happy Home Birth Podcast, and it's a really great podcast. It's just stories, like positive birth stories from home births. And I actually did an interview with Caitlin, who's the host of the podcast, and she's like such an amazing person. Like we had a hard time even getting the interview started because we wanted to just talk. But she's awesome and she's got so much experience in the space. And she actually has a birthing class We actually took a birthing class before we had Logan, but I know that if and when we get pregnant again, I'm going to want to rehear and relearn all of the things, right? Because you get pretty distracted when you're giving birth with what's going on. So I just feel like a refresher would be good. But she has a class is the point. And so to those of you that have asked me about home birthing or are interested in it, I'm gonna go ahead and link the Happy Home Birth class down below because I love Caitlin. She's so knowledgeable. She's got all the info you'll need if you are interested in looking into it. That's kind of random. And actually, my dad just walked up our driveway right now to snowblow, so I gotta go say hi to him. But I'll leave that link down below. That's pretty much it. I will hopefully see you guys back here soon. I feel like getting in the house is it's gonna normalize our life a little more now. And I miss making videos. I make them within my own comfort schedule. I am a mom and a wife first, but I'm also a creator and I have been my whole life. So I'm excited to just kind of get back to some normalcy and figure out our schedule and what works for us and what the flow is. And I hope to see you guys back here soon. And that's pretty much it. Okay, bye guys. Like usual, I hope that this video could encourage you or inspire you or get you hyped for your day. But wherever you are, I hope that you're doing well today. Keep swimming, keep praying, keep moving forward, guys. And with all of that being said, I will, God willing, see you back here very soon with another new video. All right, bye guys.